We are going live, and we are now live. We are broadcasting live. So that's pretty cool. So I'll go ahead and start. Hey everybody, I'm graphic designer Roberto Blake. Hopefully you've seen my videos on YouTube. I usually do graphic design videos on Monday and tutorial videos for graphic designers using Photoshop or other software on Thursdays. Today I've got a special guest with me, Ryan Smith. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, so really briefly, I guess maybe our elevator speech is, I'm Ryan Smith, the online marketing manager with AdHouse Advertising, and we are a full-service advertising agency located just outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we pretty much handle everything from some really cool digital campaigns to completely full-service traditional broadcasts. And we do everything in-house, which is one of the things that lets us kind of consolidate teamwork and strategize for our clients.
Now, you guys don't happen to be the ad agency of record for Saul Goodman by any chance, would you?
No. I mean, yeah. Usually, if it's a client, pretty much can't talk about it. But no, that's enough. That's not us.
Hey, better call Saul, right?
Right.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started this morning. This morning's topic that we're going to be going back and forth on, unfortunately, I don't think the setup worked for Q&A for you guys to get any questions in, but I get a ton of them here on the channel, so there's a lot of stuff we can cover. But Ryan, why don't we talk about branding real quick and how important it is for people to have their own personal brand. I know you have a lot of experience with doing that for clients. I have a lot of experience with doing it for small business clients and individuals, and obviously for myself. So why don't we go ahead and jump right in?
So yeah, jumping right in and kind of skipping over some of the definitions you almost have to have in place for what branding entails for whoever you're going to talk to.
They have.
I mean, there's so much there, but in a slim nutshell, everything you do comes down to your brand, whether that's your company brand, your personal brand, who you are, what your influence is in the community, and how you want to be remembered is in itself a brand. And that's aside from how as marketers we typically talk as branding as something other than a direct response campaign. So to hopefully diffuse a little bit of ambiguity, your brand is who you are. But then the context of that meaning changes depending upon on what the market is, on where you are, on who you are.
So to capitalize on that a little bit, yeah. And also for some relevancy. So a lot of people have the general idea that for you to have a personal logo, business cards, all this different stuff, that you either have to have a big time small business or medium business for yourself, or you have to be like a high level professional like a lawyer or something like that, and that's absolutely not true. Today, what we're seeing is that if you're even a job seeker, building a personal brand can be very important, and it can mean something very different. And the way that you brand and present yourself, whether that's having a website that's your body of work, or even just your resume, or a personal blog where you show off your skills and your knowledge as an industry expert in whatever you're doing, even if it's not something technical, can be really important, and that individuals are becoming major brands. Like if you look at all the YouTubers online, even a lot of them, they're still very, very young, in their early 20s or even not out of high school yet. They've developed their own personal brand, either based on their personality and interest, or based on their skills or expertise in a certain area, and they've been able to leverage that to get opportunities that in a lot of ways, some of them are better than jobs. Some of them make more out of YouTube advertising than people do with a regular job. Others of them have had sponsorships. Some of them got their legitimate full-time jobs based on the work they were doing for their own personal brand. A good example that I can use is Ryan Weaver. Some of you guys know who he is, some of you guys don't, but he was a huge fan of Star Wars, and he and his friend Michael Scott had been shooting like Star Wars fan films in their backyard for years, and they entered a contest on YouTube called through theforce.net called the LucasArts Lightsaber Choreography Contest. And They got, I think the first year they entered it, they either won or they got second place. That led to Ryan getting a job working on Star Wars video games, doing rotoscoping and digital artwork for LucasArts Entertainment, and that landed him jobs throughout the entertainment industry to where he's done work on NBC Heroes. He's won Emmy Awards for his visual effects, and he's only the same age as me. He's 30 years old, and he accomplished most of this before he was 25. And that's because he got out there and he put his own personal brand out there. He said, well, this is the thing I like to do. He built a little portfolio website. He put his stuff on YouTube. He worked with what he had, didn't have big budget equipment, and look at what it achieved. And that's just one example. Michelle Phan's another one. Any number of people who go out there and build their own personal brand, go out and do something, go up and say, here's my work, here I am, and here's the best presentation I can offer. Without being a business, they can achieve wild success, whether that means a job, whether it means independent financial ability, whether it means getting a startup business off the ground, whether it means making the next Facebook. And if you're a regular person or a small business like the clients you have, Ryan, it's just that important.
It's important to maintain not only your presence, but also the perception that you want to have as an individual, as a company. It's important to maintain that regardless of where someone is seeing you. So as an individual, if that's your LinkedIn profile, a personal site that just kind of goes over who you are, everything like that works really well together to make sure that when you are looked at, whether it's for a job or for a potential client, maybe it's something bigger where you're not really working in the retail space, it still comes down to brand, because what is the perception of you as an individual, you as a company, and why is someone going to choose you, whether that's for a job, a promotion, or a sale?
So what would you say technology's role has been in how people approach their personal brand going forward in the digital age? Because I remember maybe 10 years ago, maybe you had a website, you certainly were supposed to have a business card, but that was the extent of it. What would you say now in the age of technology is represents the basics of branding and how it's changed from, I guess, the brick and mortar business card age?
I think probably one of the greatest things that the digital age has brought us is it lets everyone compete on an even playing field. And what I mean by that is you have major corporations that do millions and millions or billions of dollars in sales who have essentially the same potential audience as a mom and pop shop and an individual freelancer. The playing field is essentially even when you're working with what I do on the digital marketing side of things. It's an even playing field between you and Fortune 500 companies that have $1 million marketing budgets. Now you're not going to get the same kind of like reach and overall exposure, but if you're doing something very targeted, which is where a lot of high ROI and marketing growth is, you don't need market coverage. You need to find, if you're just an individual, you have a niche, and you might as well be there. Power behind internet is you're on the even playing field with major companies, and it's easy access. Business card, business card definitely for the in-person perception, but you don't even necessarily need a business card now to compete in the digital marketplace.
No, I definitely agree with that. Would you say that also because of the digital marketplace that companies also are not limited anymore to just local talent, and do you feel that they're still hesitant where that's concerned as far as reaching out and understanding that because of digital age and because of globalization and because of telecommuting, that they could be leveraging the best talent behind their brands using resources from anywhere at any time, but would you say a lot of them are still clinging to the old brick and mortar style of the local talent pool? And why would you say that is, when they could have not just the best talent in their town, which might have a ceiling based on the level of education available there and the interest and the skills in the market, versus they could have the best of the best of the best with honor serve from anywhere?
Right. There's companies that I think are still quite hesitant to really try that. And I'm not exactly sure what that could be. It could be that small business isn't really sure how to handle paying someone who is kind of on payroll but not really on payroll, who's maybe a freelancer, who's not in their area. I know it can add some kind of subtle business differences and things like that too. That I mean, maybe that's what their basis is for not trying with kind of digital talent. Even if it's on a freelance basis, I'm not really sure why, but yeah, I mean, it can definitely open the doors to helping a business connect with someone who is very well qualified to do whatever the task is that they need um, from wherever they may be. And one of the cool things about that is you negotiate the rate. Maybe the worth is more affordable for someone who is who knows where they
Living
are.
somewhere that with a lower cost of living, maybe they have less overhead, so their salary requirement is less, but the quality of work isn't. Would you say that
Right.
it might be the difference really between small businesses and larger businesses? Because the big corporations, obviously the Sonys, the Microsofts, the Googles, the Yahoos, etc. They don't really care about location. They don't necessarily need you in a central location if you can do the work. They hire contractors, independent freelancers, telecommuters full time all the time, and they don't see a disruption.
Yeah.
And then mentally, don't you think it's just more of a mental block thing? Because I never meet literally anyone from Time Warner Cable aside from my buddy Danny, who works for them and lives up the street.
Mhm.
Who I'm like, if I have a cable problem, I'm like, well, God, can't I just call Danny? But the point is, like you all these people that your infrastructure depends on, it's not like you meet them and have shook their hand and done business with them face to face. I mean, don't you think it's a mental perception thing more than anything? Because big businesses do it all the time, but even as individuals, we rely on invisible boogeymen to get our jobs done all the time.
I think it still is primarily a perception issue, because even if you're thinking about the work you may do with coworkers, how much of it actually and this is of course job dependent. If you're doing something physical, then this is of course out of the realm of what we're talking about. But the coworkers that you work with, do you really need to work with them right next to you at your desk? Is it really going to be any different than if you're on a conference call, video conference? If you're just emailing back and forth, are you unable to get work done without someone right next to you? Or is it maybe a perception or trying new things kind of hesitancy where you're comfortable working with someone in person? And from a small business point of view, I definitely get that. They want to make sure that they're in touch with their employees, that they can meet who they're hiring and who they're paying. To some degree, it's a management style. Yeah, I mean, the talent is definitely out there. If you're looking for talent that is not at your physical location, which there's a lot of really cool, clever talent that's available online.
Absolutely. I mean, some of and the thing is, it's not even a matter of always specific locations and age. I know there's a perception thing, and we're like, the reason I keep bringing up perception is we're going to get to that in a minute with brand perception. But there's a perception.
Oh yeah, you can't do marketing design without talking about perception.
Oh no, not at all. So there's this perception that metro areas, and it's partially true. There's this perception that metro areas produce like the best IT people, the best designers, the best marketing and ad people. And up to a certain point, it's true, but people aren't analyzing the reasons for that. They're just using the shortcut of, hire people out of New York, LA, Texas, Atlanta, so on. Hire people out of these areas, without the why is it that those areas produce those individuals, or why do people migrate there for those type of jobs? And there's a lot of variables as to why. But my advice to small businesses in general for the talent pool thing is, don't pigeonhole yourself and don't be afraid to try on some manageable small level, even do a small low risk project to see if this is a possible viable thing for you. Because instead of having to cut hours and cut the quality of work, there might be a better way to do some of these things, especially with regard to marketing. The thing is, we still live in this time, perception-wise, where people feel like, well, they're paying you for your time, so why are you twiddling your thumbs? there's no incentive to do anything on a time basis for the most part. If it comes down to clock watching, and I'm borrowing a term there, and but it's funny, but it's not. And there's a joke I kind of want to make, but I kind of don't. But the point is, it's like you're not paying for time, you're paying for results. And the best analogy that I use with people, I do this with clients all the time, where they say, well, why don't you do hourly rates, Roberto? It's like, hourly rates would be terrible for you as a client. And here's why. If I were painting your house at an hourly rate, I have no incentive to get this done as quickly as possible. I have every incentive to drag it out. If I'm charging you what I believe the work is worth, and I can justify that, that actually works out better for you, because I have every incentive to get this done, for it to get done right the first time, so you don't need tens and tens and tens of revisions. You know how much revisions are going to cost, so you are committed to making firm decisions, because you don't want to have to necessarily pay more money for minor hairline tweaks over and over. So you're forced to make decisions so that it gets done and we don't have revision creep. I'm forced to work as hard as possible so I can move on to another paying project. We all win here because there's transparency and we know what the bottom line is.
It forces it to be upfront too.
Exactly.
It forces it to be upfront, where it's negotiable and you can both determine on a value that works for the two of you. Is the house worth is it worth $1,500 to repaint or something like that? If it's too much for the homeowner, then find a different painter. Yeah, I mean, bringing everything up front and then essentially taking the having to worry about money off the table once everything is done, gets things done in a timely manner without, and yeah, revision creep is definitely one of the things that that we are most certainly in the same realm about.
Exactly. So there's no real advantage to billable hours, except for a mental perception and comfort thing, as far as, oh, I'm paying for someone's time, I'm paying for someone's time. And the thing is, it's like, why do you want to pay for someone's time? Why do you want to rent somebody's time? That's, the most valuable commodity, and how can you really put a price on the value of someone's time? Now, results, on the other hand, because everyone values their time differently, I'm not going to value that person's time the same way they value their time, because for me, their time is based on what I feel what they're doing is worth. But for them, that's time that they're not doing other jobs or being with their kids or their spouse or whatever, so they might value that time 10 times what I think it's worth. And you can't put a value on that. But when you put a value on and don't try to control the process, and you say, hey, it's your process, it's your time, however you spend on it, but the thing is, I have a deadline and I have a result I need by that deadline, that's what I need done, that's quantifiable, that's measurable, and it takes all the emotional stuff off the table for both parties and makes it business. Because when you start getting into people's time, that gets really, really personable, and that gets to some very uncomfortable conversations, and that's all perception. Whether something takes 5 hours or an hour, that result is worth the same to me. I don't feel better about you working harder. I feel better about having it sooner rather than later. I don't necessarily, I mean, I'd like to think you worked hard on it, but I'd rather you worked smart on it and it's what I need. What's the difference?
Well, and hours in no way, hours in no way reflects, hours in no way reflects the quality of work. What may take one person 5 billable hours to do may take a more aware and educated person a half hour to do. So it's, the whole paying on an hour basis lends no transparency to the quality of the product or service in any way whatsoever.
No, exactly, and like you said, the quality of the person's skill level and education plays a role in too, because the thing is, one of my secrets that I will talk about in a whole nother YouTube video is preparation. See, a lot of people don't realize that ad agencies and marketing companies like you, and I work at the same way an ad agency or a marketing company works, because I worked as a marketing director, I worked as the lead designer at ad agency, I still work as a subcontractor to marketing companies and ad agencies instead of just direct clients sometimes. I operate the same way a marketing company ad agency works, because one, it's my habit, it's super efficient, and it was the best possible process, and I completely threw out all the general nonsense that freelance designers and artists would typically do in favor of the agency model up to a certain point, because It just makes more practical sense. And what I mean, a lot of that comes down to preparation. What people don't realize is when you go to an ad agency or a marketing company, they've been doing this a while. There's years worth of tens of thousands of assets that they already have, that they've collected from work that they've already done that can be repurposed. And the thing is, that's not a bad thing at all. That's a good thing because you need uniqueness, but the reality is you only need 20% uniqueness offset from 80% of what's already been successful. That's a different variant of the 80-20 rule.
Exactly. From here, it's kind of funny with a lot of marketing is if you have some degree of technical know-how and a lot of time to dedicate, you can do the things that we do yourself. Now they may not be all cohesive and working together and based on actual kind of book, but everything's also new in the digital realm strategy. You can do these things yourself. Now I can tell you how much time some of the clients who try to do this spend doing it. Occasionally we get some client who we like to call them, we rescue them from themselves, because it's actually a kind of common situation where hey I tried Google AdWords, I gave Google my credit card. Holy cow, my credit card bill this month is $5,000. What did I do wrong? I haven't made a single sale. We run into that kind of situation fairly frequently, and that's why we're like, that's why we manage this, and we manage it really, really well, is because we're working with the results and the data of a large number of different clients across a variety of categories, working directly with the companies that do this because we're essentially power buyers. You're collecting the experience of your agency and deploying that for your campaign, as opposed to doing it kind of DIY, kind of tossing some money in the wind, hoping it sticks to something. Yeah, working with an agency, working with a professional, a lot of the time that's that kind of scary price tag or something like that. But in reality, it's if you're the owner of a business, your best place is managing the operation of your business.
Exactly.
It's not working in your AdWords account. It's not working and trying to develop your brand strategy and
or your
trying to design some favicons and
or
stuff
deciding,
like that.
oh, you know what? I want the color of the website to be Ranger yellow. No, it's not that.
We like to tell. As far as when someone who sometimes lacks a little bit of taste has too much power over design, we have to have occasionally, when we onboard new clients, we have to have the "your baby is ugly" speech, and that's a horrible way to say something. But when you're the business owner, it's your baby, and sometimes but you have to be told sometimes from a design, from a taste, from a semantic accuracy, from digital positioning, everything like that. We have to analyze when we're onboarding a new client. We're like, first off, we have to discuss these things because your website's terrible, your palette is awful, it's horrendous to look at. We have to change everything. It has to go away in order for us as an agency to say this is something that we can work with. Because there's some companies who try and self-manage, and because it's their baby, they think it's great, and they don't see
I've seen it all the time. I've seen it all the time.
It's very common.
It reminds me, I did this YouTube video years and years and years ago, back when I was on a Sony Handycam, when I wasn't taking YouTube seriously, when I just did a video every once in a while kind of thing. I did this video.
Back when it was all cats.
It was Why Your Business Card Sucks. Yeah. And it was when I was a lot more snarky and a lot younger, but I made some very valid points in that video despite that fact. And it was about people who go and they print their business cards off their home printer, or they go and get a logo done at Staples back in the day before, because now places like that actually hire actual designers now, so it's not quite as bad, and they actually use Adobe products now. Even when I had I got so for my print portfolio, I got some great work done at Office Max, and I was surprised they actually had Adobe InDesign there. Was like, oh, well, you guys don't even need that for my stuff. My stuff's PDF ready. They're like, oh my God, someone who actually understands how to do this stuff. It was like, no, I feel the same way. So there was part of that. But the thing with a lot of small businesses and independents and solopreneurs, and that thing that you run into is, you're right, it is their baby. It's a perception thing. They feel, okay, because I know it better than anyone, I can do everything better than everyone where it's concerned. And that's not always necessarily true.
Mhm.
They need to stick to running the business, expanding the business, growing the business. And like you said, the AdSense stuff. I'll get on that because I have extra experience with AdSense. I used to be an AdSense account manager. I actually used to be Google. No, actually, technically, I still am Google certified. But the thing with that is, okay, you could manage your AdSense account yourself. How much time did you spend doing keyword research? What do you know about click-through rates? What do you know about click-through rate percentages and what they're supposed to be? What do you know about time on site values? Have you drilled down into your Google Analytics? What actually, aside from the fact that you want to do this yourself and you don't want to pay for it, and you understand the basics of it, what actually qualifies you to succeed at what you're doing? But that would be like me wanting to say, with no preparation, I'm going to go and do amateur boxing with no preparation. I haven't done a workout schedule. I haven't done a diet. I haven't learned anything about this. But, oh, I'm going to get in the ring and expect to win a fight.
Because you can just throw some punches, and those punches, if they just land, then you win or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
let's go.
The thing that's going to make it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how amazing your idea is. If you think you possess the technical know-how to get everything out there, first off, you probably don't. I mean, there's so much that has to be managed, and it changes so frequently. It's going to be next to impossible for you to manage just the technical changes on how you have to expose. And really, one of the best things that's going to make a good manager is the power to delegate. You have to, if it's not something that you are natively comfortable with. When you have, of course, time, budget permitting, things like that. I'm not saying outsource it, but at least figure out what else is out there. Find the price of a graphic designer to help you at least start the idea of what is your brand, and that doesn't necessarily have to be just a graphic designer concept, because there's more to it.
Oh yeah.
That. But you've got to do things more than just by yourself. When finances permitting, if you have a friend, see if they'll consult. An agency like ours will consult for free just to make sure that people are at least pointing in the right direction, and not setting themselves up in some kind of way to potentially harm themselves in the future. Because you can definitely put yourself into a box where you don't really have much of an escape. You've already sank a couple hundred or maybe a couple $1,000s into a website that's not going to perform for you. Well, now you don't have budget for fixing it because you sunk it. So.
Oh yeah,
consult first and then make decisions. What's the woodworking adage? Measure twice, cut once.
Cut once.
You got to
exactly.
do that in business too.
No, you're absolutely right. And I've seen people get themselves into projects, whether they're business owners. I've even seen designers make this mistake of, they'll go into a project and not really understand what it is that they're supposed to be working toward or doing, because their tunnel vision is so much on the project that they don't understand that it's become a money pit at this point. That you're putting more money into this than if you had handed this off, or if you had consulted the right people, and you don't get that time back. But you're trying to do so much of this yourself that the expense or the money you've lost that you could have been making doing something you're qualified to do, or something that does guarantee your money, or what have you, you put so much into this that, wow, if you had just paid the money to get it done professionally, or consult somebody who actually knows or succeeded at this, it would have actually, in the long run, turned out cheaper, and you would have had a better result, and you would have had a viable result, versus you've invested time and money into failure, and now you have no one to blame but yourself.
Right, and that's something that's usually missed, at least initially on a lot of projects, a lot of companies. They have to kind of run through this first. That if you're spending your time running your marketing, attempting to establish a cohesive design across all products that require it, the opportunity cost is you weren't managing your business. You're not managing your employees. You're not generating new sales, new leads. Everything that you as a business owner are doing is at an opportunity cost of something else. So that's one of the things that a lot of companies even don't realize.
Now, a lot of people, I've read about this a lot on different forums and LinkedIn, and I've even had a few conversations with people about it. I'm actually going to be doing a video on it maybe this week or next week, but a lot of times people say that they don't want to work with designers, particularly web designers more than graphic designers, and that's a whole another bag of stuff. But a lot of times they don't want to work with them, not because of a cost thing. Sometimes it's that they feel that designers are arrogant. In your experience working with designers, I know you've worked with a ton of them over the years and that you've had plenty of conversations with them. Like, what's your experience of that been, and where do you think that perception comes from?
I don't know where that perception comes from. I can maybe get a sense of what people are talking about occasionally. And to some degree, confidence is definitely going to be a good thing in a designer. Definitely vet the portfolio. I mean, if someone's confident but doesn't have a portfolio, are you really going to just trust the word of someone like that? I don't really know. I don't know why. I definitely feel that, though, that there is some kind of perception that designers are going to be snarky, or it's my design and you're going to use it exactly how it is, no revisions, or and occasionally we have run into some designers that are like that. What we even more so find is the designers that are like that are generally not the professional designers. It's the
artist. It's the digital artist styling themselves as a commercial designer, trying to sell their art, and they're more attached to it because there's that sliding scale between art and design that I talk about.
If even that, a lot of the time it's the really I want to use the word kind of entitled designers that are very confident, but they really have sometimes a lacking background. A lot of the time those are the ones, and maybe it's that they're still trying to kind of build up their own personal brand, and maybe they just kind of they have to focus on the confidence because there's not a sizable portfolio. We have run into that sometimes, and the ones that are harder to work with are generally the ones that have less experience. Actually, in my experience working with other designers occasionally, we operate almost entirely on an internal basis, and that's just because we have a lot of client representation. We want to make sure that everyone's on the same page all the time with all of our clients. So when we do, like, I know that we're in a weird position where we're talking about like client rep and then also the availability of like cool outside talent. There's amazing outside talent that's there. When we represent our clients, it's internal. When we act as vendor services, occasionally we'll connect a designer that works for this particular style with a client that wants a style or that we think is good for them. There's a place for everything.
And I love that business model. I love that.
Designers and stuff. Oh yeah. Back to the trouble designers, it's the ones that generally have a lower, not necessarily quality portfolio, but a smaller portfolio, are usually the ones that are harder to work with.
I think
if you're professional, then you're professional.
I think that some of that has to do with less experienced designers, whether they be younger or older, because the experience is not always a matter of age. That's the interesting thing that a lot of people take for granted, is it doesn't have to do with age. Experience, it may not even be a matter of years, because ultimately it comes down to how you've worked and how you commit to the work, and also how you design and why you design and so on and so forth, because there are people who may have been designers for years but had a minimal amount of clients or even a minimal amount of actual design-related in-house work because they're forced to wear a bunch of different hats, and maybe they're being a webmaster more than they're being an actual designer because that's what the company needs, etc. So it may mean their actual experience doing conceptual design, print production, planning process, all those things, that the actual process of design is something they have less experience with, or that they might have less execution skill because maybe they do a lot of the design meetings and work, but maybe because of the type of work it is, they spend a minimal amount of time in Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator or whichever program it is. Ultimately, speaking from personal experience, a lot of people with me, because I constantly get, I used to get that whole jack of all trades lecture and speech all the time, and what I ended up having to explain to people is, I'm not a jack of all trades designer. I'm a designer that specializes in branding, something we've been talking about this whole time. And branding means you have to work in every media and every medium, because it's a representation of the product, the service, or the individual, and that has to be able to translate across all of those things. So there were 3 things that define my design philosophy, and it was creativity, consistency, and context was what I came up with for it. And the reason is because, all right, I've been working in web design since, and I'm saying this literally, since I was 14 years old, so literally half my lifetime, because when I was 13, I decided to teach myself HTML and how to build websites. And then by that time, within a year, I started actually getting paid for it. And so I was hand coding. This is back in the days of Notepad, by the way. So there was none of this Dreamweaver stuff. None of this. It was Notepad. It was, oh God, if you miss one character, you're done. So I was a real coder. And I hadn't become a designer yet. But before that, I had always been an illustrator, and I grew up in a house of photography. I've been developing film in a darkroom since I was 8 years old. So in terms of experience, it's fun to come from a family of artistic people. And it gives you perspective as to how I became a quote-unquote jack-of-all-trades designer. I've been involved in visual arts and communication my entire life, and I've been taught by people my entire life who've done it for a living or were extreme enthusiasts or hobbyists, and I've had access to those professional-grade tools the majority of my life. So as a result, my perspective on it and my build-up is very different than someone who only got into design in college and then got a job in it for a few years. If I've spent less than 10,000 hours in Adobe InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, Dreamweaver, and Premiere alone, individually, if I've spent less than 10,000 hours, which is the amount of hours they claim is you need to begin the bottom level of mastery of anything, I would be shocked if that's the case, because I've been editing in Premiere since I was 15. So I've been doing video editing, and that was a lot of that was fun personal projects, but I've been doing that since I was then. Adobe Photoshop 7.0, before we ever even had CC or CS or any of it. And that's what that experience is I put in the hours. It's not necessarily even the years. We're talking about just the hours, because for the last, I don't know how long, I've been doing Photoshop every day. For the last year now that I've been doing the YouTube stuff, I've been doing Premiere every day. When you're doing that stuff every day, whether it's on a job or personally or whatever, you just get better, you get faster, you get more intuitive, you understand the ins and outs of the programs better, you're just more efficient, your perspective is different. And when someone's paying, whether it's an individual, an ad agency, any type of service professional, instead of doing it yourself, what you're paying for is you are dabbling in this. You're paying someone who's invested thousands upon thousands of hours in doing this, built up assets and templates and resources as other people that they can call that actually know what they're doing. And
it also becomes much more than just how many hours have you logged in your current profession. I mean, that makes it sound very like you're like the qualification is the kind of pilot level thing. Well, if we're going to fly in this airline, I want a pilot that only has 100,000 plus hours flight time or something like that. It's beyond just hours. You have to ideally find someone who has a passion about what it is that you need them to accomplish. If it's a designer, you don't just want a designer that's like, well, I'm beyond the apprentice level of graphic design, so I'm obviously qualified. Find someone that has a passion behind getting behind you, backing your brand, and really developing you as not only as a company, but as a perception, as an image, and and as a brand that people will connect with. I mean, just I've never actually done business with you, Roberto, but I mean,
We've done
going
like just,
through
some social
and
media
having
like stuff, yeah.
yeah,
Like
I mean, we've done like some social media and stuff like that, but I've never, I mean, as an agency, we've never even paid you for anything. You're just
right.
a cool graphic designer. But going through a lot of your portfolio that I've seen, um, there's more than just some of the style and design that I've seen. There's some definite things that I can hone on across the mediums, like book covers, bus billboards, movie posters, everything. Then everything get digital. That I mean, it's the breadth of things is just so huge. I mean, I can identify some cool styles and stuff. I'm a digital person. I'm by no means a graphic designer. I am exactly the reason why I don't do graphic design. Because I know there's people for that.
You're the reason I have work.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, but going through, you definitely have a couple of really cool styles that, as a graphic designer, that's not really just taught in a school. You have to have someone and find someone that's passionate, obviously, about what they do. You have an awesome grunge style that I like, that shows off in several of your projects, including a couple of things that are kind of like a Beyond Sin City style. That's just awesome. Coming of course from not a graphic design background and stuff like that. I mean, just going through your portfolio and it's simple. But I've seen the things of that caliber. I've seen from graphic designers that have spent years in formal education, and I've seen that caliber and better from graphic designers who are completely self-taught, who maybe they're 17 years old or something like that. I mean, I've seen graphic designers, I've seen coders, programmers, occasionally even some marketing people that are 20 years old, maybe or maybe not actually college educated, but because of the passion that's behind it, the technical understanding, the knowledge of taste. There's definitely some background things that you need, especially, or maybe more so, to operate in a team environment. But if you have someone behind it that is self-educated and passionate about what they do, they can turn out some quality product, even if it's like constrained to a style or a particular methodology or something like that. There's some good self-taught talent, and it's usually available online, not a job fair or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Do you only go to job fairs anymore?
People do actually do that, and it's the weirdest thing. And I've been like coming up with an idea, like maybe like there's got to be a digital analog, I think, to a job fair that's not like Craigslist or something like that. And I think it'd be more useful in a way. But going back to something you touched on, yeah, no, as opposed to doing the traditional 4-year education, I did a 2-year, associates, which I didn't even I didn't finish the English elective. I went and got recruited into my job, so it was like I had literally, I think, aside from that English elective, 15 more credits or something, 15 or 20 more credits, I forget, than was needed. In fact, I could actually technically do a couple of classes and actually get 2 degrees. But the point is, like, what I learned out of formal education had more to do with certain concepts and principles. Like, even the technical capability for what I could do, a lot of that was self-taught. My style stuff was actually, self-taught. You don't really, aside from experimentation, maybe, you don't really develop your style as a result of your schooling per se, unless you're adopting the style of your professor.
Oh, definitely.
Which my professors were more technicians than they were artists, and they were designers from that point of view, because they were people who primarily worked in like print shops, or they were more art directors than they were designers, in terms of they were less hands-on They were the people who were more behind a campaign and making sure things are consistent and spot checking it than anything else, and making sure all the technical specifications, which is, you do need that. You do need that, even as like the way I work as like a one-person agency. I have to be an art director, and I have to put that hat on too, and I have to go back into in design, like, okay, crop marks, bleed, all this stuff is correct, and I have to, like, okay, does it all match? Does the overall tone of what I've done across the breadth of this match for what the brand is supposed to be, and what the vision was that I discussed with the client, so on and so forth. But I'm finding that more designers today are getting bogged down in being technicians and gearheads than developing a style, like you said, or even multiple styles. I mean, a lot of my different styles came down to experimentation, the fact that I'm a big movie buff. I get bored, I read books, I listen to music, I do all these different things, and I'll draw something from it and just go. And then in my personal work, I'll say, wow, that came out really good. And then when I get a project that fits that, I'll go ahead and I'll apply that style and that look and those things that I learned in my own experimentation to that project, and end up developing things that also coordinate with that brand and build them kind of a personalized visual style just for either that project or that brand that's completely unique. But I don't think I could do that if I wasn't doing personal work every now and again.
And I think that probably what builds up especially freelancers, is the ability to self-edit. If you don't have the ability to self-edit as a freelancer, that's one of the core concepts that you really have to focus on. And that definitely is what sets the difference entirely from a really good freelancer to someone who just does contract work.
No, I would definitely agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that because one of the things is and one of the things about schooling is that it becomes a little unrealistic, and this is why a lot of designers don't necessarily realize that they have an issue with getting a job right out of college. You and I have had this conversation, I think, once or twice before, is that we talked about what someone values as results, not necessarily time or even how much time you've put in to learning your skills, as much as, well, as a result of that time, what result can you produce, right? So a lot of these kids coming out of college in general, whether they're designers or anything else, or web designers or marketers even, what they don't have is they don't have results that were produced under real-world conditions a lot of the time, because they didn't self-edit. The whole time they were in school, they didn't necessarily freelance or try and get jobs or do internships or gigs on their own, saying, I'm waiting until I get the degree because that's all anyone cares about, I'm ready. No one cares about the degree. I mean, some people do, but they're more interested in the results. The degree was always being used as a shortcut to say, you're capable of these results because for 4 years you were trained. Now that's not enough of a qualification anymore. It's that we need to see what you actually produced, and you're X amount of years old, you're 22, you're 25. It's like, well, what have you done with yourself? What have you done? I hate to say it this way, but in their mind, they're thinking, well, what have you done with your life? What results have you really produced that is worth me taking a risk on you shelling out money every 2 weeks for you to be sitting here doing? What am I getting? And if they don't have, looking through a school portfolio where you had 2 weeks, a month to work on something is not going to do it for them, which is why in my portfolio YouTube videos, I'm always telling people, okay, if you have nothing else, yes, you go with your student work, or if it represents your best work, you go with your student work. But if you can, get that stuff out of your portfolio, even do personal projects, but detail and break it down as far as like even a case study of what you did and how long it took, so they know that, okay, this is your style, this is your work, this is you working without someone else, standing over your shoulder. So how much supervision do you need? How much guidance do you need? What can you produce? And that's
coming at that from a business point of view, then, is your degree is not your valuation.
Yes,
exactly. Your previous work is going to determine your value, especially your value to this project. That fancy piece of paper that says you spent 4 years doing something graphic related or something marketing related or something like that doesn't necessarily mean that you're really qualified for this project. you have to be able to document it based on this is what I've done before. It's really good. I think I'm a great fit for this project. I mean, if you're gonna say that my time first, my time or my overall contribution to this product is worth X, you have to compete with someone who's young or not formally trained or something like that, who is saying this is the wealth of self-taught information that I have, and this is what I think I can contribute. The degree doesn't necessarily mean qualification in any way.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So you brought up an interesting term that goes to something. I think it has to do partially with something I think I haven't published it on the blog yet. No way, I did. There was a part in a recent blog article that I wrote, which will also be a video later, about diversity in the graphic design industry. But one thing that I brought up was because, and the short version is, there isn't as much a diversity problem in graphic design and in the creative services and marketing industries as much as it's a result of economic realities is where the diversity issue comes into play. Because what I determined was there's a cost with being a graphic designer that people don't calculate, and the short version becomes like, okay, assuming you're not going to go the Mac route, you're shelling out like $500 for a computer. If you go Creative Cloud, $600 your first year for the software. If you're only using Creative Cloud.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Internet fees, web hosting for your website portfolio, your smartphone bill, all these things you need to just conduct business, your first run of business cards, your office supplies, a printer scanner copy of fax, etc. There's just all this stuff that goes along with it. So I determined that your first year as a graphic designer, if you had none of your resources off the bat, you're spending between $3,000 and $5,000 your first year, not including any cost of education. So
or marketing. I mean, hey, are people going to find you?
Exactly. So
it is expensive, and it does require a lot of backing in some way. I mean, I know a lot of graphic artists actually personally who graphic arts isn't yet able to self-sustain a career for them. So they're working in some other company that they have to do in order to pay for all of the extraneous costs that being a graphic designer.
Absolutely, I did.
Or really working anything digital. I mean, you've got to pay for a lot of stuff in order to even just be qualified as able to complete a project.
Exactly, and the individual projects even have cost associated with them a lot of times. So there is that part of it too. I mean, you might have to buy assets, fonts, licenses, additional software, and you have to account for that. And sometimes you can't necessarily bill it into the deposit or the upfront, depending on what's going on. So that's an issue as well. So ultimately, you talked about like an evaluation from a business perspective. So even if I don't believe in the hourly rate thing, but if you were going to do hourly rates, part of the way that you would do that is you would need to the only way that makes sense is determine how much do you actually work on average for one thing, and figure out what that is. So determine how many hours you can actually feasibly bill for throughout a month or a year or whatever that scale is, and what your actual investment cost or your cost of doing business is. And this is something, if you take a business class, everyone learns this, but maybe everyone hasn't, and maybe everyone can't. And it's something I'm going to do on channel because, again, if people can't go to college and get this information, they got to be able to get it somewhere. So I'll contribute what I can. But the point is, it's like there's a real cost to being a graphic designer, and if that cost is going to be, and your cost of doing business as a designer, if it's like $5 or $10 grand a year for you, and if the first year it might be, and then it'll go down after that, I hope, for you, depending on what your situation is. But whatever your deal is, let's just say it was like $5 grand a year, your billable hours, however much work you think you get the capacity to do on average, has to be able to account for that and still make you a profit. And God forbid, if that's all you're doing, you have to also account for what your living expenses are and be able to make that. So that's what the markup is. And that's also how agencies work, because they have to account for their cost of doing business with regard to their overhead, their vendors, the people that they have on staff, all of those things, and that's why the rates are what they are. So when someone says, oh, that's too expensive, or I can't afford that, or, well, the thing is, that person isn't beholden to what you can afford, because they have a cost of doing business too. You shouldn't be getting a $50 logo because you shouldn't be willing to go meet Mark Cuban in a $50 suit. So you shouldn't be expecting, one, you shouldn't want a $50 logo, $50 worth of logo, and two, you shouldn't expect a designer to spend 20 hours of their time for $50.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's definitely a lot to cover. Yeah. There's so with perception of value, self-valuation, valuation of services. Yeah, that $50 logo might be great. It might be affordable. Does it look like a $50 logo? I'm going to say it probably does. First off, if you found someone who would do a logo for you for $50, it's probably worth $50.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. So when you're looking at, actually that $50 logo over the course of time and what it may cost you in terms of maybe a low conversion rate, low worth, low assessment, something like that, it may cost you a lot more money in lost. Oh yeah. No, but as far as like profit in business, yeah, I mean everyone has to make a buy, and if you are hitting your break-even point, that's not profit. So you're not gonna. I mean, there's no then potential for growth in there. So if you're comfortable exactly where you are, then hit your hit your margin, and then don't take any more. But that's not how business works. That's not how business grows, and that's not how people earn an income. So when we're talking about an agency or a graphic artist or something like that, a lot of people are very reluctant to spend money on something where they're like, oh, well, I can buy Photoshop for free. Well, yeah, and then now you're going to have to spend the time to educate yourself, to take additional time that's not even project time, to just experiment and find out what's going to work well in the future, so that you have an ongoing wealth of experience. So yeah, I mean, everyone has to cover their bases, whether you're an independent graphic artist, a freelancer of any category, really, and an agency like ours. And we also have the essentially responsibility to say, this is your ROI right now. When you're investing marketing dollars or strategizing, when you're doing broadcast buys, something like that, this is what your current ROI is. This is our cost as an agency. And I mean, we're going to cost money, but the wealth of experience that's just contained in this agency is several hundred years of professional experience. That's all all combined across different people, different markets. Instead of just slapping a value on that, because to a large sense, there's some things that we charge hourly for. It's mainly like revisions and stuff like that, but in terms of project and how you're going to complete project, we have to wrap the cost of an agency into your new ROI to say, yeah, we cost you money, but look at how strong your growth is. Look at how your ROI has changed year over year. Your sales were this, and now they're now you have national or international reach, and you are massively profitable, and this is your ROI or your ROAS. I mean, there's so many different metrics to have to look at and stuff like that. But in essence, the cost has to justify itself. But a lot of the time, what's really missed is when you try and internalize it, when you do it yourself, you are actually costing yourself a massive opportunity by not properly delegating to people who that's their job and that's their passion to do something in whatever category it may be, from design to marketing to broadcast buying to production. I mean, if you're taking it on and that's not where you have dedicated your life and your time, you're probably creating some form of opportunity cost for yourself and for your company.
And I read a lot of fiction. One of the things that like Gemmel's books talk about sometimes is smart kings never do what someone else can do better faster.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That's a nice one sentence explanation for it.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like you said, there's opportunity cost, there's productivity. You sacrifice control sometimes to get a better result because, I mean, you know, you can't necessarily do it, but there are things you can do that you're better at than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the thing that I could never, like when I was doing in-house work, the thing that I could never get some people to understand that were working either under me but in a different department or even at the same level as me or above me is there's this long list of things that I'm the only person in this room that can tackle them realistically or has any inkling how to address these problems. Why can't I get help for the grunt work that only requires a body to be thrown at it? And why do I have a management position when you're not, and then you're taking away some of my authority to delegate and see these things because I'm trying to be efficient, and it's not about me wanting to leverage someone or throw my weight around. It's that literally, whether I'm doing it right this moment or not, there are things that I should be thinking about if I'm not even actually executing. There's things I should be strategically planning or researching or doing that only I understand based on experience, education, and background. I need to be doing that and not this grunt work that you could literally throw a warm body at. You could throw anyone in this room at this problem who's twiddling their thumbs on their Facebook, whatever, or not answering phones right now, or they could get to it, or it's not a priority. Why do you need me to do this thing that is not something when I have specialized skills that you need to be using right now? And that was that's going to be business nepotism thing of people not being able to get over, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and that's it. It is fairly common. One of the aspects that make anyone a more effective manager is determining who is best at what task. Is that something that is truly you, or is that something that should be outsourced to someone? Do you have another staff member? Is there a freelancer that's better qualified, better suited? And whether that's grunt work or whether that is something that is very specific in terms of design or something that you very specifically need, the effective manager is going to say this person is the best qualified or has the lowest cost for the best output. Yeah, I mean the effective manager is going to delegate and not say I'm the only one that can handle this, therefore I'm going to do everything. That's exactly how you sink yourself into opportunity costs, into boxing yourself in the future. That's exactly what you should probably not be doing. As a manager, delegate.
Exactly. I mean, and that's something, you know, that like even as a now that I'm a solopreneur, it's not to say that I don't still find ways to delegate certain things, believe it or not. In terms of okay, I might not have the time sometimes to promote something that I'm doing the way that I would like. So I reach out to my community of followers in social media, and I'll literally ask for help. And you know that you've seen me do that before. You know, we've had conversations about that. We even help each other out on those things. And I'll do the same thing for other people. A friend of mine, she's a freelance writer, and she also does consulting for a lot of businesses. And she asked me to do her a favor and actually review this survey for her and give her some like honest feedback on whether it was a good survey. And you know, I went ahead and I did that for her, and that was her way of, okay, now she doesn't have to pay because she has a following on social media. She doesn't have to pay for a focus group or go to usertesting.com or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we got our first question.
You know, one of the while you read that, let me just touch on that real quick. So, actually, that's a cool question. I'm kind of curious what you use too. Yeah, no, when we act as, whether we're acting as an agency or if we're just kind of doing a first touch on someone who's maybe interested in working with an agency but doesn't really understand if it's right for them or something like that, or whether it's in my role as a Google partner or one of the Google Small Business Community Advisors, we want to make sure that you understand what first off, what's available to you, what the potential pitfalls are to it, and then who's going to be best to do this particular task. Is it something that you can do yourself? Is it something that you can spare the expense of an agency to work on your ROI for something? We want to make sure that individuals, freelancers, contractors, clients especially, we want to make sure they're aware of what's available to them and educated in at least the basics of understanding. These are the tools, this is what's available, these are potential outcomes, things like that, because someone who's educated makes better informed decisions, and that's just a given. So even if someone can't, as an example, if someone can't afford to work with an agency and they're one of our local businesses or something like that, we'll just take them into our office and say, this is what we do. This is to some degree. We don't necessarily have time to spend teaching like courses and stuff like that all the time. So we'll get a group of businesses together and say, this is how we operate. This is what the benefit is in using this tool, and this is why you as a small business should try this, because you want to make sure that you have some understanding of it, so that in the future, when you get solicited by a whole bunch of self-proclaimed experts, everyone and their grandmother is an online marketer. Everyone and their cat it looks like on when you start searching stuff on the internet. So you want to find out what you actually need to look for, whether you're looking for an individual or a consultant, an agency, freelancer, something like that, just to make sure that you don't have future bad experiences. And in online, and maybe this goes back to some companies' hesitance to use online talent, is the potential for it to be unqualified or to end in something that, if you have an internal employee, then you know who they are. Yeah, so making sure that someone who is a potential client or interaction with you is qualified and vetted is actually something that we take very seriously. We want to make sure that our clients understand exactly what it is that we do, so they have proper expectations. And then even if they're not going to work with us, we want to make sure that they're not going to be essentially like taken advantage of in the future. So they know how to self-vet the people that they may come into contact with in the media that we're essentially experts on. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally get it. Let's take a look at our first question here. And it's from, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Good Night. So he has two questions, actually. What VPS do I use to run my website? Also, do I have a video on how to configure Photoshop to take advantage of your computer hardware? All right, two very good questions. So starting with the VPS, believe it or not, I run multiple websites, including my robertoblake.com website and blog, off of a shared hosting account with 1&1. Now it's the highest level of shared hosting, and I got grandfathered into a certain price. I think it's like either $10 or $12 a month that I pay quarterly, but I never really see the bill. Why? Because of my Google AdSense monetization. I never see that bill. Just like I never see my Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. Why? Because of my YouTube channel. So I never see that bill. So I don't really worry about it. But that's what I have. The site doesn't slow down despite the fact traffic-wise, I'd say for what it is, it gets really good traffic. Gets about 14,000 unique visitors, but 25,000 plus unique views every month, plus spikes every now and again. So for the average person out there, even the average small business, you're probably not going to see that much or much more traffic than that per se, just depending on what you have going on. So, you know, that's probably a good range. That's probably what you can go with. I recommend newbies who have like a small business that they get something like the medium level of a shared hosting account and see how it fits their needs just so they can keep their cost low. A good thing to do sometimes is to prepay for a year and you get a better deal on it. You don't need everyone in hosting will try and talk you into, when you're starting a small business, into getting a VPS or a dedicated server. They're doing that for their reasons and for their margins. And with a lot of web hosting companies, your 1&1s, your Site5s, and your GoDaddies, and even your Bluehost, you can host multiple websites on a less than $10 a month plan, not see them be slow, unresponsive, and have no problems, and not have your email be an issue with, again, that cheap plan. You don't need a $50, $60, or $100 a month plan. They'll try and talk you into that because that's just the nature of business and the value of business, and they'll tell you that. Now, if you're doing e-commerce, which I'm not doing on those sites, then you probably do need like a VPS solution if you're doing that, because then you need the SSL encryption for payments. You need all those things. If you're going to be a government contractor, you might need it because you might need like the dedicated IP address. But actually, the 1&1 plan that I think I'm on actually does come with a dedicated IP address. So there's that. There's all kinds of.
A lot of it comes down to what your needs are. It really comes down to what your needs are. If you're running something that you can cache or something that doesn't change very often, then a shared grid hosting or something like that is probably necessary, and VPS would be
like a $2 a month
overkill unless you have need for it. Now, if you're running a site that has thousands of visitors, I mean, Roberto, you may be in that kind of gray area where it could do it could be some added benefit to like site speed or something like that for you to upgrade. But if you're not running a lot of scripting, things like that, as long as you're not if you're not self-hosting video, which is a major hurdle for a lot of servers.
Oh yeah. And almost no need.
There's generally not a reason for it. Yeah, you should definitely be able to justify the need to run something VPS. So grid hosting is usually a good place to start. So if you're starting, go with the lowest price you can get. Maybe. What I would look at more is actually the ability to scale. So if you start small so that you can make sure that you're maintaining margins and affordability, start small if you have the ability to scale.
And always ask them about help with migration to a new plan or a new server. Find out, will you get any downtime? How easy is it? Will you have to reset your stuff, especially if you're on WordPress or some other platform? Like, how they handle it? Is it possible for them to keep up your old account while syncing to the new account so you can verify that everything went through collect? Ask those kind of questions, because you don't want an interruption in service, especially if you're selling anything, or especially if you have a larger audience or a very dedicated audience. It's that important. So ask those kind of questions. Scalability is probably...
And the level of service scalability, and then the level of service too. So something like even the difference between a Microsoft server and an open source like Apache server, something like that. If it's something that is the Apache server, there's a lot of different individuals that are very familiar with it, myself included as a programmer.
Oh yeah.
If you're running on an Apache server, I know exactly how to essentially do most of your needs. If you're running on a Microsoft server, guess what? I'm gonna outsource your tech support.
Yeah, not nobody, but like the majority of people don't know Windows IIS, and they don't need to, and that's why, because if you're not specifically running something that's using Silverlight, if you're not using something that's using ASP.NET, you don't need Windows, so you don't go that route. The biggest mistake I see newbies with hosting make is they feel, okay, I'm on a Windows desktop, so I need Windows hosting, right? Wrong. You don't need Windows hosting for anything.
Yeah.
I'm on a Mac. Is there Mac hosting? No, Mac hosting is really something super, super specific, and there's actually not really a need for that anymore, so a lot of people don't do that. There's like a few agencies that use Mac media servers remotely, and that's it. And they don't really even need to do that. They just want to do that. And they have the money.
I can't think of a need that would actually just justify for like small business, any kind of, unless you have a very specific need, there's no reason, and that's usually the answer for a lot of things that are digital relating to hosting, domain, all of the add-ons essentially that every hosting company is going to try and upsell for you. You generally don't need unless you have a very specific need for it, whether that's a CMS system that requires something or traffic or something like that. Unless there's a need for it, don't.
Yeah.
It's just an added expense unless you can really articulate why.
Yeah.
And people who are professional IT, they can either help you articulate why you need something. If they can't, you probably don't need it. You probably really don't. If it's a simple WordPress site or something like that, and you're not going to do the WordPress hosted version of it or something like that. I'm not even a WordPress person. When we develop sites, we don't develop in WordPress, but we'll help people kind of determine if you're running on a WordPress site. No, you don't need to be paying $100 a month for your hosting in any way. You can find something very cheap.
No, exactly. I mean, a lot of places, even if you're doing WordPress, because it's database, they like try and like sometimes fearmonger you into saying, oh, if you're going to run WordPress or run multiple WordPress sites, you definitely can't do that on shared hosting, which is, that's crap. I literally, because I also run some other blogs, some niche blogs, and some stuff for some friends on my web server, and they just, pay the domain fees. You can do that. You can run like 10, 15, 20 sites on, at least if it's the higher end share hosting, like $10 a month, $15 a month, with no real problems. A lot of my customers that have started small businesses, they're running it on even cheaper plans, with no problem. Their stuff is still super fast. It's not a big thing. And if you go with a larger, instead of a smaller company, that's probably
it's so flexible. Yeah, it could be any. If you have something that's at least a decent setup that allows you some flexibility, there's immense power. First off, in caching systems. So once a page is loaded, as long as it's not really, really, really dynamic, and you have a reason for that as well.
Right.
A lot of the time, a good caching system is going to be a lot better than paying any amount more for a faster server. I mean, if you're generating the same page each time, you don't need to be using a large amount of processor time, extra cores, or whatever they want to upsell you. You don't need to do that if you have a good caching system that handles it.
And
another good example would be, yeah. I mean, there might be some that are paid, but why? I mean, you can find some really good ones that are free as well. Another good example is the CDN. If you have like $15 a month to budget, spend $10 a month on some pretty cheap hosting, also to cover your domain, and spend $5 on like Amazon S3 or something like that to handle your content. And that is actually a huge boost in your speed too. When things are able to serve to site visitors from multiple domains, your browser is going to channel things. It'll load from multiple sources at once instead of just trying to pull everything from one little grid server or something. Massive boost in speed, and all of it was essentially a pay-as-you-go kind of content delivery system. So there's. But again, you have to have the technical knowledge to even know what is available for you. So that's a lot of the time what the biggest hurdle is finding out what's even available, not the actual execution of it.
No, you're exactly right. To answer this second question, do I have a video on how you configure Photoshop, take advantage of your computer hardware? I don't have a video on it. I did do a blog post on it way back when. I probably need to do an updated version of that post. But the short answer is you go into your preference settings, and there's a couple of things you can do. If you have a second hard drive or an external hard drive hooked up, you can set up that scratch disk, and you can prioritize which one is going to go first. That's going to help you if you need more resources than the RAM has. And in terms of GPU, if you have the ability to take advantage of GPU accelerated options for certain things like the liquify filters, etc., if you check that box, then Photoshop will use some of your graphics processor instead of just your CPU for certain functions. You'll get better live draw times on the screen, things like that. The other thing you can do is you can turn up or down your caching levels and your history states. You can do that in the preferences as well. So those are some things you can do to get Photoshop, take advantage of your hardware. The other thing is get the latest version of Photoshop. What people don't know about any of the software products and why they're part of the reason they're hating on Creative Cloud is they don't understand that with older versions of software is built for the technology available at the time. You can upgrade your hardware all you want, and you won't necessarily get a one-to-one output on performance for the software. The software may not work any faster because it may not recognize that newer technology you're putting into your hardware at all.
Until right, it was never built to recognize it.
Yeah, like Photoshop, until Photoshop CS6, Photoshop wasn't even taking full advantage of multiple processing threads. So you could have 8 cores all you want in CS3 and CS5, and you're not really any better off. But an upgrade to CS6 or CC, you'll see tremendous performance gains.
And I actually don't follow hardware as much as I used to, like when I was a teenager and stuff like that. It was always about the hardware.
All about the hardware.
Now remind me, Photoshop is OpenGL and stuff like that now, right?
Yes, it does. And Premiere Pro is also, I think, OpenGL or OpenCL or possibly both. Mm-hmm. What it is now there are certain features that take advantage of the GPU and the OpenGL, but the other features do not. But it's very specific stuff. Like you have 3D painting and 3D live painting and rendering in Photoshop now. And you can even bring in assets that were done in other programs. So those are the kind of things that actually take advantage of things like CUDA cores. Okay, those are what actually take advantage of it. The Liquify tool, that actually takes advantage of it. Some of your blur, like your live blur tool, that takes advantage of it. The majority of Photoshop, like 80–90% of Photoshop, does not really utilize much in terms of your GPU, which is why if you get a cheaper laptop that doesn't even have a dedicated GPU, you're fine. The new MacBook Pros with the Intel Iris and Iris Pro graphics that aren't using the NVIDIA, that's fine for it to be one. That's high-level integrated graphics now, by the way, on those new MacBook Pros. It can even do 4K output, and it can even handle like massive games. But Photoshop isn't even taking full advantage of that because for 80% of what it doesn't need to. But for the things that it does, it will take advantage of it, and it will use that, and so that's what it is. So in terms of CUDA cores, you don't need a video card. I know like a lot of gearheads that, oh, I'm building the ultimate Photoshop computer, and I'm going to buy a $500 video card. It's like, you're not video editing. You don't need a $500 video card. Even if you're video editing, you don't need a $500 video card. You can get something with just like 1,000 or better CUDA cores. The main thing is you need the higher bit rate. You need like at least 128, 256, or 192 would be better. Because that's your pipes, and you need those dedicated pipes for the video graphics card. Should do a video on that.
Again, so a lot of it still is like a lot of, and it still kind of boils down to the technical understanding of exactly what you need really for a given task.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember. It's pretty much been like an ongoing kind of between Intel and AMD, a little more on their processors and things like that. Is, well, Intel has a higher clock speed. Well, AMD per clock cycle gets slightly more on average done. So I mean everything essentially has its applicable use and stuff. You just have to figure out kind of where it is.
The short version.
Nerds are generally the cool people to talk to.
The short version of Intel versus AMD is if you're working in our industry. You probably want to go Intel for a lot of different reasons. Basically, it comes down to the way our programs use resources. Intel. If you're a casual person, gamer, casual YouTuber, you can get by with AMD, and it's gonna be better in your budget. But when you're doing production level stuff like we are doing, the way we use resources, Intel works better with our applications, especially the Adobe stuff, and that's just what it is. And, a lot of it, like you said, it'll come down to, well, what are you doing that justifies the need or creates the requirement for X? A lot of people will say, okay, well, I want to build this high-end Photoshop machine, but well, what are you doing with that quote-unquote high-end Photoshop machine? Oh, well, I'm a photographer and I'm editing, photos in Lightroom and occasionally Photoshop. It's like you only need a like $500 laptop, honestly, or
Yeah,
maybe
for significantly
MacBook
less
Air. Maybe you
investment.
can get by with a MacBook Air.
Yeah. So for significantly less investment, you could have essentially the same um, technical potential for what your needs are, and then all of that additional capital that you then deliquified and have now put into a large laptop investment or something like that could have been maybe you got another lens or something like that that could have
Oh yeah.
expanded your reach as a photographer or something like that. So again, it's by not fully understanding like the tool or something like that, you may have priced yourself out, boxed yourself in, created some kind of opportunity cost. I mean, the best kind of situation to be is to understand exactly what your needs are so that you can reduce the ways that you also can limit yourself in the future by making business or personal or whatever they may be decisions now that may be too large for the scope of what you need them for.
Yeah. Like like YouTubing. Primary example. Uh, again, I have to do I've made a list of like 10 videos I need to do as a result of this conversation. But uh, now I have to make a video on like how to make a cheap YouTube studio because a lot of people doing a video on how I do my YouTube videos, but a lot of people ask me this question constantly in social media, and my Nikon D50, 3200. I'm confusing it with my friend's camera now. My 3200 came out like 2 years ago. They recently released the 3300. 3200 is now a $500 camera. When I bought it, it was a $700 camera. And for the portrait side, I bought a prime lens also for low light video, which was a $200 lens. Thing is, I invested a very minimal amount of money and got an immediate return on investment through doing like actual photography and video gigs, not to mention the YouTube money. Like, I've made all the money back on my YouTube setup several times over, relatively quickly. And the thing is, my lighting kit that I do my videos with on a regular basis, the lighting kit I'm using even right now, even though I'm using the webcam, that was a $150 lighting kit, and that's not that bad for a lighting kit. It's a 2 lights, 5 bulbs. I can control the switches on them, so if I don't need as much light, I've got that. They've got fuses, and it comes with a carry case. It's from Square Perfect. My camera now is like $500, and if you get it new used, you can probably get it for like $350. I use a $3 lapel mic to get the audio quality you've seen in my videos. A $3 lapel mic. I'm not using a Rode Video Pro. I'm not using a Smart Lab. I'm not using like a $60 lapel. Like the $20 lapel mic I was using was crap compared to these $3 lapel mics from Newer. So I bought them bulk. I constantly snap the pins personally, so I bought them bulk, and you can get like 10 for like $20, believe it or not. So again, like you could literally invest under $500-600 in your YouTube setup, and you can have stuff that's still on par with like top YouTubers. Like you can still produce it because like if you look at the difference in video quality between like my videos and like most of the people out there who have like 1 million subscribers, in terms of the actual video quality, there's literally no difference because we're both shooting on DSLRs, and most of them they're not using expensive cameras. They're using a Canon Rebel T3i, which is the Canon equivalent of my Nikon, or they're using the newer model of that, which is a little pricier, but it's still between a $500 and $700 camera, usually with a kit lens. And their big money is going into their microphones, into going with the Yeti for $200, or the non-Pro Yeti for $100, or a Rode mic, or a Rode Video Pro mic. Their lighting setup, some of them have like $600 lighting setups. I'm doing fine with $150. And that's what it comes down to. There's always a way to do something affordably, and you can figure it out, whether that's getting your business cards done, getting your marketing done, getting your video production stuff done. There's always a cheaper way to do it without sacrificing quality.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the value that you're looking at, that camera that's now $500, that when it was launched was what, 2,500 or something like that.
When it was launched, it
I
was
mean, when we're talking about like
700.
phones, that one was 700. I mean, when we're looking at like when if we take for example like our video production division or something like that, when we're looking at technology, you have to kind of price out what's the actual value of the thing to you, not really what the consumer value is. Now, when we're looking at like lapel mics that a $2 lapel mic, $5 lapel mic, $50 lapel mic, a $300 lapel mic, does the change in value change what it's worth to you at all? It's still a microphone. Do you really need one that's like a broadcast quality, the thing they would have down at the TV station kind of quality microphone, or do you need one that, I mean, if you have a microphone that is a higher quality than what your software will actually output or something like that, then first off, it's a silly purchase.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to justify why. Now,
And
when we're buying,
you have to know that first.
exactly, yeah, because it's not a lot of it. It's still pitched as like a consumer race to have the best product. You have to be able to justify why you're doing it. When we're looking at like broadcast equipment or something like that, when we have to pull something apart in channels, and we're going to have 3 or 4 microphones and a multitude of cameras that are recording it at, yeah, I mean, there's justifiable reason to have it if you are an independent producer, and I mean, this conversation could be had from microphones to websites.
Right.
Unless you can justify a technical need for it, all you've really done is purchased something that now you have to work harder to make margins and pay off.
And a lot of that can be avoided if you actually understand what you're buying and why you're buying it, and you have a way to measure the value. Like, I'll give you a primary example with the camera instance. So the camera I bought, even from a photography side, it can take pictures equivalent to a $3,000 camera. And I can say that as a photographer because cameras are not about camera bodies. They're about really 2 things: sensors and lenses. Sensors and lenses. They're not even about megapixels as much as sensors, which is a part of megapixels. But DxOMark is the authority respected by the top photographers in the world and do extensive scientific tests on the quality of a sensor. Check this out. You've heard of the Canon 5D Mark III, correct?
Vaguely, but I'm no photographer.
Right. Well, for like video cameras and for even photography cameras, the Canon 5D Mark III is like like before you get into the $6,000 cameras, it's the creme de la creme, at least from a like prosumer level, right? So it's like, okay, this is, if you have $5,000 to spend on a camera and lenses, you go out and usually, if you have money to throw at, oh, what am I getting? I'm getting a 5D Mark III, or I'm getting the Nikon D800 or now the D810. That's what people would go out and do. And that's what, like, whenever I go to, like, conventions, that's the cameras that I see photographers have. And I get the same quality of shot when we're shooting in daylight as they do with this $500 camera, because the sensor score for the Canon 5D Mark III is an 85, and the sensor score for my camera is also an 85. Now, there are a bunch of features the 5D Mark III has that mine doesn't, but the quality of the image that it produces under the same conditions when it's not low light is exactly the same. What Canon 5D Mark III does that mine doesn't is shooting in low light. So like when you're shooting super high speed shots for like sports photography, or you're at a boxing match, yeah, you want the 5D Mark III or the D800. But if you're shooting in daylight, like when I go to like Comic-Con or Dragon Con or anything like that, and you're shooting in daylight, or you're shooting indoor in a well-lit place, or you're shooting with flash, guess what? The difference in the price is not a difference in the result at all.
So maybe me as a non-photog, maybe I can summarize this, is you want to be able to pay for the core features that you are going to use and not pay top consumer price for the features that are a nice little selling point, but you may or may not ever actually even use nor need.
Exactly. Exactly. And the money you save can invest in something that makes a real difference, like every photographer will say glass, 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 glass. Lenses.
Mhm.
So if I had a difference between, if I had $5 grand to spend, um, I would buy a $1,000 camera buy that's got some better core features than my current camera, which is probably the D7100, and then I would buy $4,000 worth of glass, and
Because
that's why I'd spend the
that
money.
more than a yeah, because more than a camera, that changes what you have your flexibility as a photog and essentially as a business too.
Yeah.
That's going to change your potential and the breadth of your potential more than having a couple extra buttons to press on the camera body.
Exactly. So primary example with other business stuff. Do you want to invest a bunch of money in your computer hardware that you're not capable of even using to its full potential to have the beastiest computer in the world? Or would that money be better allocated toward your marketing budget, or hiring an accountant to manage your finances, or toward somebody being an on-call IT professional for you, or getting a programmer to build out something that can help you manage your business better?
I mean, if you're going to spend $5,000 on something that you're essentially making the consumer choice to purchase top level, even if it's not really something you need, that money may be better spent on an office manager or accountant.
Absolutely. So let's move toward rounding down, I guess, last 10 minutes. So what I will start with is any questions, Ryan, that you would like to ask me?
Without stretching things any further, because I know that there's already plenty of future content just generated out of this discussion. Questions for you? Not really. Just I would encourage you to keep producing the videos you're already doing, because you're definitely loading your YouTube channel with some cool stuff. So, questions? I don't know. Maybe there's a better point in time for a Q&A specific section or something like that. But
yeah, that would actually be pretty awesome. Let me ask you some questions, because you're a big marketing guy, and this would help me out, but maybe it'll help out some of the people who watch this too. What you know a lot about me and my brand, and what I've been doing with social media and my channel, and you know how I've grown my audience, and you've seen the timeline basically of where my jumps and leaps have been, and where that's going and where it's gone. What's your advice at this point in time to me, aside from keep doing what I'm doing? What should I do, if anything, differently? What could I do better? What should I change? Is there things that I should stop doing? Are there things that you think I might be doing wrong, or that I could improve upon? What are your thoughts? And are there areas I should expand into?
Now, without going into extreme detail about pulling apart your website or anything like that, because that's something that I usually enjoy doing. I would definitely encourage you to.
I'm totally redo that, by the way. That's a long.
And that's always a long task to do, and it's always changing. No, without any kind of detailed or sensitive ripping stuff apart kind of thing that we like to do first.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that on our own time.
Yeah, I would encourage you to continue to make analytics and database decisions on your content, and that will help you take the qualitative properties of your content and make quantitative assessments on their overall value to visitor interaction with them, potential lead generation off your site, that kind of thing that's going to work for you. Make sure you're using analytics and database assessments on that to not only determine it's not are they working, because I mean you're doing very well. What I would actually encourage you to do is look at your analytics for what content specifically, categories. If you're looking at kind of I think you have a tagging feature and stuff like that. Which ones are actually resounding with individuals, and look at both your video analytics and your site analytics in kind, because they're gonna tell you different things. If you have a particular category that is more engaging and earning you a lot more shares, and maybe your focus and your performance indicator would be AdSense revenue or something like that. Where are your categories more productive for that? Yeah, I mean, we have to be able to justify what we do in a essentially data-oriented manner. So, but there's also a lot of missed opportunity for determining with data what people are loving and what people are also not enjoying. If you have a category or something like that where people are spending 15 or 20 seconds reading it, then maybe that category transitions into something that's an offshoot of your most engaging content, that kind of thing. It may be also at some point in your future lucrative to look at doing more like paid inbound or something like that, where if you can say the average visitor on my site generates, let's say, like 50 cents of assessed revenue, and that's essentially based on like a regression and global averages. In this category, their propensity to convert either into an AdSense click or a future lead, every site visitor is worth, we're going to just say 50 cents. If you can get traffic to your site that's of that same consistent quality for under 50 cents, you've broken even. Now, if it's for 50 cents, you've broken even. If you can get that qualified traffic to your site for less than that arbitrary 50 cents number that we've just kind of picked, then you now have a profit margin. Keeping in mind the opportunity cost that your time to manage that might be. So you might justify that hour or 2 hours a week or something like that of your time and say this is the cost. So now your target inbound cost might be 35 cents. Well, if you're under 35 cents, then you are absolutely profitable. So now we've determined what your costs are and what the cost is to generate that same kind of profit generating traffic. So I mean that's the kind of ballpark that we spend a lot of time dealing with, and that's getting fairly granular. There's a lot of kind of like
it's really helpful to me, and I understand everything. I don't know if other people followed it, but I definitely understand that because I always look at the ROI, especially with my YouTube videos, just because of the production time. So yeah, that's definitely important.
And that's in a very simple nutshell. It's every visitor on your site, you should be able to count and track what their average value is for that visit, and you should probably have a fairly concise knowledge of what that is by channel. So paid, organic, social, that kind of thing, and you can always sub-channel. So find out what a visitor's value is to you when they're on your site, and determine a number that you want to stick under and say. But you have to watch it because when you introduce new traffic, it changes your averages and things like that. So for every visitor, we make this, and it only costs this to get them to the site. So as long as you're staying within margins, you are essentially running something that is online profitable.
Right. And for the folks watching at home, a lot of that has to do with what you'll want on Google if you want to research some of that is click-through rates, conversion rates, and cost per user and cost per transaction. Those are the kind of things you'll want on Google to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here.
Right, and you also have to have the you have to understand that just because there's like key performance indicators that are there doesn't necessarily mean that those are goal key performance indicators. And a great example of that is a click-through rate. A high click-through rate doesn't really mean too much of anything other than you have maybe an ad that people are responding to. Now, if in any of my ads for pretty much any of my clients I use the word free, we're going to get a higher click-through rate.
Oh yeah.
But we're not going to have any kind of higher quality traffic. It's actually the quality of that traffic is actually going to decrease significantly. So if you use the word free, like free estimate or free anything in an ad, people will click on it at a higher rate, and the click is generally what costs money. What's that?
Now, new, and free. Those 3 words.
Yeah. Now, new, and free are very good ones. And they will make people click on your ad at a higher rate, but those people that click are still in that kind of like awareness, consideration, trial mindset of a consumer where, yeah, they're going to click it to maybe learn more, but they're probably not going to take that next step of action. And if they do, they could have been reached likely through a better ad, better targeting at some other point in the journey. So a high click-through rate is actually a great example of generating you a higher cost and actually decreasing your ROI unless you have a high conversion rate that backs it up. Oh yeah, so you have to be concerned about what the cost is and what the return is, not just some key performance indicators because they look good. Everyone likes to see a high click-through rate on their ads unless you have the backing of a high conversion rate on that also. What you're really doing is just generating yourself a higher cost. Yeah. And that's something that, I mean, when we tell people that you can do your marketing yourself, you can. Whether or not you're doing it well or right or best practices or really generating the kind of traffic that maybe a professional agency could for the same budget, it really boils down to the understanding of the technology and the system and how often it changes.
Oh yeah, and also, again, like you said, using qualitative data to understand your audience. A lot of times, whether it's on the design side or on the marketing side or with general consulting, a lot of things I run into, and I ran into more of this when I was an in-house guy than anything, is there's the perception of who your client is versus the data that tells the reality of who your customers and your client and your audience are. And what happens is people
very much so.
are more, their mindset is about who they want their audience to be rather than who their audience actually is.
And that's a hurdle that can block a lot of progress for companies too, is the mindset that they know their consumer, except that's actually not what the data reflects. So continuing to pursue a dream consumer may actually prevent you from reaching people who actually want to do business with you, but maybe you are being off-putting to them, maybe you're not reaching out in quite the right manner, all because you have kind of preconceptions on what your consumer is instead of what data actually suggests is the better alternative.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, probably more than we actually originally intended in this first broadcast. I definitely would love to have you on the channel again, and we'll definitely make arrangements to do that.
Sure.
I'm thinking of potentially even putting together a panel for a specific show I'll talk to you about later offline. So, hey, everybody, super secret project coming up, probably the 5th super secret project, but yeah, that. So that's definitely going to be fun. I actually enjoyed, this is the first time I've done the live Hangout broadcast, so everybody, I actually enjoyed it. I hope you did, Ryan, too. Looking forward to doing something like this again. I want to incorporate it more into the channel.
Yeah, definitely. There's, we come from two kind of different industries that have to mesh very frequently. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting talking to you, both online and offline.
Absolutely. So, all right, everybody, we're closing out. This will actually be up on the YouTube channel. We'll throw it out there in social. We encourage any of you who are live viewers to definitely do the same if you enjoyed the topics that we covered. Go ahead and through Google Plus and through the YouTube channel, get in touch with us. Ryan's got his information up on the screen. Reach out to us with any questions you guys might have about our areas of expertise, and we'll try and get back to you as our time allows for. And we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely be doing more videos like this in the future. I'll probably be introducing new guests. I don't know that this will be a weekly thing yet. I just haven't figured that out. That could be a scheduling thing. But I want to know that I'm doing these live broadcasts at least once a month. It'll give me a time to introduce some new people to you guys, for us all to collaborate and network, answer some of your questions. You'll get to meet great people like Ryan. And make sure you're following him on social media. Do you want to go ahead and throw out your stuff?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm pretty active on Twitter usually, and that's just it's just at @AdHouseRyan.
Which is actually how we met through Twitter.
Yeah, actually that's true. And then we just kind of do some occasional things on a lot of it on our website. We're getting a lot more active in on YouTube, and it kind of helps that we're a pretty cool video production company too. So we're definitely there. Although the place that I'm going to be is going to be Twitter. So.
So definitely check out AdHouse Ryan on Twitter. Make sure you're checking out adhouseadvertising.com for any of your advertising and marketing needs. As always, if you need a freelancer, you can go ahead and reach me at rblake@robertoblake.com. Check out my website. You obviously know about the YouTube channel, so I'm always giving out free, unsolicited advice there. So you can always look forward to that every week. Ryan, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, all of you who tuned in live. Thank you to all of you at home who are not watching this live. Hopefully you subscribe and you'll be able to get more content like this. And anybody, if you have questions, we'll definitely answer those things in social as time allows. And I see that there's another question that popped up in the chat. Let me see if I can just get it real quick. I have a small YouTube channel, blah, 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 about showcasing viewers. It depends. Viewers, if you guys have YouTube channels out there, definitely reach out to me through the YouTube interface. Just depending on what our cross audiences might be, what you're interested in doing, there might be some collaboration opportunities. We will see. But yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I would love at some point to possibly showcase fans of the channel. So that could be a thing. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Make sure you like this video if you liked it. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching. And again, thank you to my special guest, Ryan at adhouseadvertising.com.
Yeah. Thank you, definitely.
All right, take care, everybody.